So it's 5:30, and I think I shall start and not make people who have joined us on time wait. So today, when Manisha asked me what should the topic of this Thursday be, I thought to myself, and I discussed it with both my, my partners in sharing this edition. I asked them whether it would be all right to do something different this time, where we are not connecting essentially on one topic per se. And so I chose musings because, again, musings would become something common for all the three, because it would essentially mean a reflection or thinking about something. And I thought that every artist, a writer, a poet, a painter, a singer, every artist always has a muse. He always has a source of inspiration, something that triggers a thought, something that makes him or her write. And so I thought, let's call this week's edition Musings. But I wanted to particularly talk about one of the most favorite uh, sources of inspiration, or the favorite muse of many poets, and that led to a whole period of a certain kind of poetry called pastoral poems. So today's edition, in fact, is about pastoral poems. And I'd just like you to give me 1 minute. I just need to pick up my copy in which I have a poem to begin with. Sorry. So pastoral poems are poems which necessarily connect human nature with that of natural nature. The poems bring out a connection between humans and nature, and they generally, pastoral poems are poems that idolize rural life or idolize nature. So these pastoral poems, they kind of explore relationships between nature and human beings, and they romanticize the idea of a very simple country life, and they bring out the idealistic life of somebody who lives in the countryside or in the rural areas. Pastoral poems essentially had their origin in Greece in the Hellenistic period, and one of the first people who became famous there was Theocritus, who wrote about the countryside largely. And then it is said that the Roman poet Virgil was highly influenced by this, and he also wrote his epic on an epic which became a very good example of pastoral poems. And then for some time, this continued, because from there it went into Latin, and naturally from Latin into English. It became very popular in the Renaissance period. And in English literature, Edmund Spenser became very well known, followed by Christopher Marlowe, who became well known for their poems on a shepherd's life or on rural, the countryside life. And a lot of these poems, for example, Christopher Marlowe's The Passionate Shepherd to His Love, was a very famous poem. But that's almost not being done except by students who study the history of English literature. They do these poems. So I decided that I should, in fact, not go into these archaic collections, but bring to you something which is more modern, bring to you something that we are more familiar with, and which does not need too much of an explanation or too much of a guide to understand what the words or the sentences in the poem actually convey. So I will begin with a very, very simple poem. In fact, one of the most favorite ones I'm not going to read, which is Daffodils, which all of you have read, studied sometime or the other. And so I'm leaving that out. But I will certainly do some others, which again may not be something that is very unknown to you, but at the same time maybe it brings back memories to us about poems that we have studied in school or in college. So I'm going to read to you a poem. In fact, there's one by Robert Frost which I would like to read to you, which would probably I'll read that later because that is really, really modern American. But I'll begin with Ted Hughes, who was much older, of course. I have a poem of Ted Hughes here, which all of you are very familiar with because this is part of our CBSE course also. So Ted Hughes' poems are quite often about nature, about the creatures of nature. He has written a whole lot of poems on animals and birds. But most of these poems, of course, have a very biblical connotation to it. So I'm not going to read any of those. I will read to you instead this poem about the laburnum top by Ted Hughes. The teachers teaching the class 9 or no, sorry, class 11 syllabus would be familiar with the poem. But those who aren't familiar, I'm sure you'll find this quite a poem. The Laburnum Top by Ted Hughes. The laburnum top is silent, quite still in the afternoon yellow September sunlight. A few leaves yellowing, all its seeds fallen, till the goldfinch comes with a twitching chirrup, a suddenness, a startlement at a branch end, then sleek as a lizard and alert and abrupt, she enters the thickness and a machine starts up of chitterings and a tremor of wings and trillings. The whole tree trembles and thrills. It is the engine of her family. She stalks it full, then flirts out to a branch end, showing her barred face identity mask. Then, with eerie, delicate whistle chirrup whisperings, she launches away towards the infinite, and the laburnum subsides to empty. So, if you look at this poem, it's not really a description of the laburnum tree. It is, in fact, talking about the relationship of the tree with this family of the golden finch, which has its nest on the tree. And it really makes a connection with human life. And I often feel that while the poet is talking about this, he's talking about how the, the tree and the relationship between this bird which comes into its nest and brings the whole thing to life, the interdependence of the birds and the tree is so beautifully brought out in the poem. It's like the interdependence of a parent or a grandparent with the rest of the family. So when the children are home, how the whole family is reverberating with life. And when the children or the grandchildren leave, the emptiness that it leaves behind, that's what my connection is to the poem. And I think that's beautifully enunciated just with this example of something from nature. So that's one poem that I thought I would like you all to reflect upon. And there's another beautiful poem, again part of the course, but this is another very simple poem and doesn't need too much of an explanation. And then you can talk to me about what other poems are brought to your mind, because I'm sure all of you must have read some of these pastoral poems. So there's this beautiful poem by William Butler called The Lake Isle of Innisphere. I will arise and go now, and go to Innisphere, and a small cabin build there, of clay and wattles made. 9 bean rows will I have there, a hive for the honey bee, and live alone in the bee-loud glade. Glade is a valley. And I shall have some peace there, for peace comes dropping slow, dropping from the vales of the morning to where the cricket sings. Their midnights all a glimmer, and noon a purple glow, and evening full of the linnet's wings. I will arise and go now, for always night and day I hear lake water lapping with low sounds by the shore, while I stand on the roadway or on the pavement's grey. I hear it in the deep heart's core. So I'm sure a lot of you relate to this. How often are we filled with this urge of moving out of a big city, of running away from this hectic humdrum of life and going to a quieter place, to a place where we can connect with nature, to a place where we can probably just go and sit by the riverside and enjoy the beauty of the quietness of everything that surrounds that place. So that's what pastoral poems are largely about. And modern poets have started writing more and more about going back to nature, about the beauty in nature, and how they really miss this. So, if any one of you is reminded of any poem that you would like to share, please go ahead. You can just raise your hand, switch on your mic, and speak. Is there anyone who would like to share something?
I'm reminded of a solitary reaper
Yes,
by William Wordsworth.
that's right. Yeah, yeah. Anyone else? I'm sure all of you have also heard about the Lucy poems, which are all again pastoral poems, Wordsworth, right? So, anyone else? I'll just, before I finish talking about pastoral poems, I'd like to read to you, as I said, a modern poem by Robert Frost. It's called After Apple Picking. How many of you have read that? Sometime or the other, I'm sure you have come across this poem, read it, or taught it. And so here it is, After Apple Picking. This is a modern American pastoral poem. My long two-pointed ladders sticking through a tree toward heaven still. And there's a barrel that I didn't fill beside it. And there may be 2 or 3 apples I didn't pick upon some bough. But I'm done with apple picking now. Essence of winter sleep is on the night. The scent of apples I am drowsing off. I cannot rub the strangeness from my sight. I got from looking through a pane of glass. I skimmed this morning from the drinking trough and held against the world of hoary grass. It melted and I let it fall and break. But I was well upon my way to sleep before it fell, and I could tell what form my dreaming was about to take. Magnified apples appear and disappear, stem end and blossom end. and every fleck of russet showing clear. My instep arch not only keeps the ache, it keeps the pressure of a ladder round. I feel the ladder sway as the bows bend, and I keep hearing from the cellar bin the rumbling sound of load on load of apples coming in. For I have had too much of apple picking. I am overtired of the great harvest I myself desired. There were 10,000 fruit to touch, cherish in hand, lift down, and not let fall. For all that struck the earth, no matter if not bruised or spiked with stubble, went surely to the cider apple heap, as of no worth. One can see what will trouble the sleep of mine. Whatever sleep it is, were he not gone, the woodchuck could say whether it's like his long sleep, as I describe its coming on, or just some human sleep. So, good thoughts to reflect upon and to think about how nature probably can become an inspiration and a muse for us to write something and maybe read about it the next time we are here. Mr. Ghosh is today going to talk to you about something related to recognizing a good piece of artwork. So I'm going to now invite him to take over, and then of course, Jatin is also ready. I can see him on the screen. Mr. Ghosh, over to you. There's somebody's mic is on. If you could please mute it because it's constantly disturbing. Manisha ma'am, if you can see whose mic is on and do the needful, please.
Good evening, all of you.
Yeah.
I thought I'll start a series. From that series, today's one is the first, you can say, first episode. I'm going to talk to you about how do we start a painting, actually. And for that, I'll take a painting which one of my students did some 30 years ago, a class 8 student. First thing that you have to have before you start a painting is a topic. Now, if you are working on your own, for your own pleasure, of course, you will wait for inspiration or you'll take something. You have a topic of your own. But as a student, or at times, somebody has told you to do it or you liked it, so you can start that. Here it is a painting which the teacher gave the topic as children. Just it was told to the children to make a painting where the topic is children. Now, this particular child's painting I'll describe. And before I describe, I'll request you to close your eyes and whatever I say, please try to get the picture in your mind's eye. It's a painting where there is a whole group of children playing under a tree. The tree is banyan tree, where the foliage has taken about the 1/3 of the paper, and the branches and the roots and everything there, and a big trunk. Under that tree, there is a fairly big patch which doesn't have any grass, and a set of children playing there. First thing, you look at that painting at the center of the page almost. There's a group of girls sitting and playing 5 stones. A particular small child behind one girl trying to pour a glass of water on that child's head where she can't see because he's behind her. In front of that child who is pouring water, there is another girl who has noticed this boy, but winking and kind of they are conspiring against this girl. Now, this is one particular patch where these 4 or 5 girls and this boy is drawn. On the right side foreground, there is a court, you can say, court of hopscotch, and a group of girls doing hopscotch there. And the girl who is playing is, yes, jumping the way they jump. And around that, there are different girls sitting and standing and kneeling down and doing different kind of things. On the left side, middle of the page again, there's a group of boys. They are with their catapult and stone and trying to probably hit a particular bird or squirrel up there. There are 1 or 2 squirrels we can see in the painting. There are 1 or 2 birds we can see. It's a banyan tree, so there are those big leaves which are in different colors. Because banyan tree, you will see all 12 months, it sheds leaves, as well as there's a particular time when the fruit comes. But in the tree, you will see different 2, 3 greens and maybe a set of leaves which are between yellow and brown color. 1 or 2 leaves are even falling in the ground, and on the ground there are some leaves which are fallen here and there, and 1 or 2 of the leaves are even with some holes which are eaten by the maybe insect, caterpillar or something. Now, when we look at all these, and another thing, at the distance, you can see a thing which is, we call in Hindi, pakdandi. It kind of gives an idea of it's a village or very close to village. So it is something like a story where it starts with long, long ago in a distant land. Or here, the atmosphere is created that way. The children all are dressed lower middle class or poorer class children, you can make out by their dress. They are playing games with not those fancy rackets and bats and everything, the kind of things which the poorer class children play and do it. In this painting, the main character that we see, a main portion that we see is those set of girls who are playing hopscotch, who are playing 5 stones. The moment you look at the painting, first your eyes go there. Now, That is an important part in any painting. Like a poem or a story should have a highlighted part, a line which you remember, or in the story, that climax part. The same way in every painting, doesn't matter how abstract that painting is, there has to be a portion which is center of attraction. So these are those ways through which the child directly or indirectly understands the technicalities or taught the technicalities. Uh, in my subsequent talks, I'll talk about step by step how do we go, uh, what are the important part of every drawing and painting, what makes a painting great, and what makes a painting very ordinary,
You
right?
still have 5 minutes.
So, a painting, to make it good or bad, uh, there are a number of points which has to be there in the painting. Like a little while ago, I said center of attraction. Now, the another very important part is the composition part. That means in the paper, the space where I am painting, where I am drawing, is my drawing or is my subject good enough size for the paper, for the space? Is it too big or is it too small? The used area and unused area always has a relationship. You can make it very, I mean, clearly yourself. This room is too cluttered, or this room is too empty. There isn't any actually formula how much is too much. But whether it is a painting or it is your room or it is a city, everyone can make out that this is too cluttered or too crowded or it is empty. A normal, roughly, the proportion is uh, leftover space should be a little less than used space. In the painting, always. And as I tell my students, it's not only in the painting, in acting. You may have noticed the silence in between the sentences or the silence in between the dialogues make a lot of sense. Those are part of the story, part of the atmosphere. In a painting, also, very often a leftover space also is meaningful. In subsequent paintings, I'll talk about these placements and leftover space and mm, where to place and where not.
Thank you, Mr. Ghosh. I think that left us with some abstract ideas of what we should look for in a piece of art, whether it's a painting or a piece of embroidery, a wall hanging, or whatever you have. I think Jatin, on similar lines, is going to talk to us about the elements of music. I requested him to tell us something to, in fact, instruct us on the basics of music. Jatin, over to you.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Am I clearly audible?
You're a little soft, Jatin.
Check.
You
Hello. Am
can't
I
hear.
clearly audible now?
Even now it is soft.
The,
Just make it louder, please.
I will use a different device. Just give me a second. Check. Am I clearly audible now?
Yeah, you are.
Perfect. Okay, so for today, I have chosen few topics. So first, I would like to start with the basic one. Like,
Jatin, there's an echo.
okay, now it won't be there. Perfect. Thanks for telling them. Yeah, so in the music, like the music is a language of sounds. We all know about it. And when we talk about the sounds, then of course we have different instruments. We have vocal music also. We have instrumental music also. And when we talk about the notes, then there are certain names that are assigned to the notes, as we all know, like C, D, E, F, G. And when we talk about the notes, then there is a reason why the names are assigned to the notes. Okay, the names are not randomly assigned to the notes. There was a reason behind it because generally we um, see the sound. We actually, what is the sound actually? The sound is calculated in hertz. Okay, but if we will talk about like I am saying to my friend, let's play 440 hertz or let's play 436 hertz. It won't make any sense because so many sounds are there and we cannot keep talking about the numbers every time in the music. That's why we have assigned the names to the sound. For example, yeah. So if I'm playing any note here, like let's say I'm playing the A note. Okay, that's a simple note A, but it is actually 440 hertz sound. I cannot keep telling everyone let's play the 440, then 440, then 436, and like that. That's why we have the names assigned to the notes of the music. Okay, and when we talk about the names that are assigned, then there is a language we use which is called staff notation. Now I will show you some basics of the staff notation. Just allow me to share my screen. Um, yeah, so here is a page that we use for the music. And just a second. Okay, when we talk about music, then there's a system that we use, and we call this system staff notation. And in the staff notation, in this page, we will only have 5 lines. Each line and each space will tell you about some note. Okay, and in the last class, I remember ma'am also asked what are the clefs. There is something we call treble clef. Actually, what are the clefs? Clef always define the range of the sound, how low or how high a sound can go. For example, in the keyboard, by the way, I will tell you there is also a branch in the music. We call it the music theory. So in the music theory, when you try to study the music theory, there is some expectation also that you must have some basic knowledge of the piano or the keyboard. And why people say that? Because keyboard gives you a range of sound, okay, and you use both hands together. So you have a option to use lot of notes together. But when we talk about the violin or when we talk about the guitar, it is not possible there. Why so? Because your hands, one hand is busy in the notes and another hand is busy in producing the sounds. Now, if we talk about the treble clef, generally it shows the instrument that can produce this range of sound. For example, the guitar. Okay, guitar produce or the music that we write for the guitar, generally it is in the treble clef. The violin music is also in the treble clef. And I mean, I am not going to dive deep into that theory, like how the range of the sound can differ, because this topic will go for a very long duration. And I just want to keep it very simple so that at least we can start with the basic notations. So treble clef, when we were talking about the range of sounds, then there's another thing we have, we call it the bass clef. Okay, as you can see by the name, okay, bass sound. Okay, generally this is a heavy sound. And when we talk about the instrument that use the bass clef, those instruments are also like the cello, upright bass, which produce a very heavy tone. If my piano is audible to all of you, is it audible, ma'am? Perfect. So when we talk about the bass clef, then it is the left side of your piano, which is giving you a heavy sound. So and when we talk about the treble clef, it is a higher sound. So I will give a very small example here. Let's say I'm having few instruments in my room that I will be using. So one is the violin that I will be using. And in the violin, you can clearly see the size of the instrument first. Okay, the size of the instrument is like this small. So by looking at the size of the instrument, we actually get a clear indication that this is not going to produce any higher tone. And the music that you're going to see that is produced on the violin, it is also going to be used with the treble clef. Okay, um, just a second. And the tool that is used to produce sound on the violin, that is a bow of a violin. Let me just stop sharing my screen so that you can see it clearly. Yeah. So, oh, okay. Yeah. So that is the bow of the violin. And violin is a type of an instrument which works on the principle of friction. Okay. Like, is it audible? Okay. So when we talk
No,
about the
Jatin,
violin,
we couldn't hear.
okay,
Can't
then,
hear.
and can you hear this sound only? This plucking sound.
Yeah, we can hear the plucking sound.
Perfect. Then I will use the only plucking sound here. So actually, when we talk about the range of the sound that is produced with the violin, and I was saying that the instruments that produce the higher pitch, okay, we use a treble clef for them. But if I will talk about the instrument that produce the lower pitch, for example, I'm having cello here, still I will use the plucking sound for it. And you can clearly see the size of the instrument here. Okay, it's almost like covering my body here. And the range of sounds that you can think is like the, I don't know if it is audible because generally the cello sound is like too heavy to produce. Okay. And not audible.
No, it's not audible.
Yeah, generally cellos are not audible on any microphones. We use the special microphones for them. That is a condenser microphone. We are going to discuss about it later. But if we talk about the range of instruments, so depends on the clef. Sorry. So the range of instruments that I was saying, the sounds that are produced. I will give you another example of it. Like, just a second. I will share my screen again. Vineyard. So when we talk about the piano music, of course, that initially I said that we are going to use both hands together. Yeah. Okay. So here's a small example of the piano music. The piece that I'm going to use is a minuet. Now, when we are using both hands together, then of course, one hand is going to cover our treble clef, another hand is going to cover our bass clef. One is the normal sound, and another is the heavy sound of the instrument. Now you can check it out. Is it audible to everyone? No? Okay. One more time. Oh, yes. Now it will be audible. Yeah. You can clearly see here when both clefs are used together, one is a treble clef and the bass clef. Some signs are also used here. Okay, the sharp sign, generally people know it as a hashtag sign, but in the music we call it the sharp sign, which means that few notes that will be used on the black keys of the keyboard. And the notes that you are seeing here, every note has its own value. Value means like how long a note is going to sustain. Okay. And by the way, another example, if I will give, is that the different piece, and then I will tell you to try to analyze the difference. Um, just a second. So another piece that I'm going to share is by the Chopin, Fantasy Impromptu, one of the difficult pieces to master. And why people say that one of the difficult pieces, because a lot of notes, lot of technicality. Apart from that, it is also using the dynamics. Previous piece was not using any dynamics. And when we talk about the dynamics, then it means the loudness and the softness. And you can clearly see here is sound is sustaining. Okay, when I was talking about the dynamics, then you can start differentiating here. Like in this area, if my cursor is visible to you, then you can see the piano is here. P is given here. Okay, and when initially I'm just highlighting this area here, SF is given, which means forte. Okay, forte means this loud hit on the keys. Forte is loud, and most of the time when we are using the terms in Western music, those are the Italian terms. And once you start listening to the piece going from this side, it will be sounding soft because the piano dynamics are used here. And later on, when you will see the crescendo is given here, and then the diminuendo. Like you will see the crescendo means the sound is increasing, and then the sound will get lighter and lighter here. Now, Now, again, from going from this area to this area, you will start finding the difference between the quality, the loudness and softness, because the piano was used here. Piano means soft. I'm not talking about the music instrument. I'm talking about the dynamics. Piano means soft sound. And when we talk about the forte, it means loud. And from here, you can see the transition, how the sound is changing. Now it is again softer. Now look, another dynamic which is coming here. After this part, the transition is going to PP, which is more softer than piano. We call it pianissimo. Once you look at the pianissimo, it's like a very soft touch. And by the way, when you look at the piano practice or the training that people go through in their piano training, it is one of the most difficult dynamic to master. And the only reason is that it takes a lot of control in the fingers. You can see that. Again, it's a piano. So that's how the dynamics keep changing in the whole song. But why we keep changing the dynamics every time? Why there is so much variety of dynamics when we are trying to convey some, we are trying to play some piece. And after that, you can clearly see that moderato means moderately, cantabile, like it's a ending. And so after the moderato, just a second, it is removed. Yeah. And other signs which are given here, like I'm not going to jump into the signs right now, but I'm just I'm just talking about the difference that dynamics make in the music. And why we have the dynamics, because it is almost like a speech that we have to deliver. Okay, the way we speak, I mean, we cannot speak every time in a robotic manner. Okay, in our natural human speech, if we will notice, then there is a difference in the dynamics also. If I'm ending my sentence, I will start, slowing down, or maybe because that is a punctuation marking that we study in the normal language. And these dynamics are also contributing to that natural sounding thing. But the previous piece that I played, you will notice that there were no dynamics in that. Then does it mean that piece was not expressing anything? Let me just play that piece one more time, the previous one. Then you can start noticing the difference. So the previous piece that I played here, Minuet, which was by John Sebastian Bach. Okay. So the same thing that was I played. It is played in a straight manner. No change in the dynamic is there. But of course, there is a style in which the piece is composed. But there was also another reason. Because when we try to play any piece of music, we generally try to think of a composer. What era the composer was born? Okay, what was a time? What was a trend at that time? That is where the music history plays a role. once you will try to see the era in which the music was composed, like it was made by John Sebastian Bach, and the date of the John Sebastian Bach is like 1677 to 1733. At that time, the piano was not even invented. So how you can expect someone to add dynamics to the musical piece? And by the way, right now again the question is there that why the both clefs are used together when the piano was not even there. So we had another instrument which was called harpsichord. In the piano, we have the hammer system. So once we try to press the keys hard, it will give you a very hard tone, because in the same way the hammers are hitting the strings inside the piano. Right now it's an era of digital pianos and keyboards, so the touch sensors are also there, already there. But in the normal pianos, there is no touch sensor. Everything is like the natural acoustic sound. In the harpsichord, the concept was the plucking of the string, and in order to pluck the strings, people use the quills. Okay, so I think the time is also over. I will try to continue this topic, but with different pieces. And ma'am, over to you, because
Yeah, I think
I mean, today I'll
Jatin,
try to
maybe,
cover the dynamics
yeah,
only.
you'll have to give us very smaller doses because we are all novices as far as Western music is concerned, right? So let me just finish with a little poem which will take us back to why and how nature can affect us. It's called The Maples by a poet called Mary Howe. I asked the stand of maples behind the house, how should I live my life? They said, shh, shh, shh. How should I live? I asked, and the leaves seemed to ripple and gleam. A bird called from a branch in its own tongue, and from a branch across the yard, another bird answered. A squirrel scrambled up a trunk, then along the length of a branch. Stand still, I thought. See how long you can bear that. Try to stand still, if only for a few moments, drinking light, breathing. That's what we can do when we are in the midst of nature. Thank you, Jatin. Thank you, Mr. Ghosh. And thank you, all of you, for being present here today. We shall end this session here, and we will see you next Thursday with a new segment. Thank you and good evening.